quality longboards. We hand make, press, cut everything, different longboard skateboards that you see here locally. And I got my first longboard in 2009. I had a friend I was working with at the Green in Mactown at the time. He was selling all of his stuff and moving to Hawaii for 3 months. And he had one, and he said, "Hey, do you want this?" And he gave it to me, and I loved it, and I wanted more. And saw how expensive they were. And Dad's an engineer, have some design background, building stuff with him. So, spent hours and hours on the internet, made a couple, and got addicted and hooked to it. And that's what started it all. There's not a huge, at least in Dayton, there's not a huge scene. There's some people, you see them on college campuses. Columbus has a much bigger group of people around Ohio State, Bowling Green, Cincinnati. But surprisingly, we actually have one of the kind of higher end, larger downhill races for the year in October. It's the only major race in October called Soldiers of Downhill. It's in Bainbridge, Ohio, and it's nuts. I got to go last year.
Yeah.
It attracts people from British Columbia, up in Canada, California, Pacific Northwest, all over the Midwest, and people hit it like 60 miles an hour about at the height of it. And, I mean, it blew me away watching people go that fast. They're required to wear full leather suits and full face helmets, and it's definitely, because of that, it's getting more and more attention in Ohio every year. The main thing that's really separates us is that every board we sell, I sell, I donate 10% of the funds to two nonprofits. One to an orphanage in Africa, in West Africa, in Benin, which I went there in 2009 and stayed at an orphanage. This orphanage, I don't know, it's always had a place in my heart. So when I started the company, that was really the focus. The equalities, fighting social injustice, bringing equality to the world. So 2009, I went to the orphanage. 2010, I got my first longboard, and once I started building them in 2011, I was getting hooked for it, and I was also really wanting to go back to Africa, but it's expensive.
It is.
And being a poor, young adult, couldn't really afford it. And I don't know, I had this longing to go back there to be with the kids and to help support them, so I'd still be able to send money for school fees and stuff. And I don't know, it clicked one day of combine the two passions, build boards and sell them, which will also give me a more regular and steady way to help support the kids there. Yeah, the other one I do is Be Free Dayton, which is a local nonprofit here in Dayton that helps educate and prevent and save people out of sex trafficking. Yeah, which it completely blew me away when I started learning this, and I went to an event called Not in My Backyard, which was all about learning it. And, it just made sense. We're supporting people, in the world, but why not, people in our own backyard too, which helps feed, the demand throughout the rest of the country. Yeah, we love the bike path.
Bike path, okay.
Going, waking up early on a Saturday and, busting out 10 or 15 miles, which seems like a lot, but, it's exercise, but it's not as hard as you think. But on the bike trail in Beaver Creek, there's a little side road that cuts off. It's actually like, they have a name for it, but it's where the police station is, the post office and stuff, and we'll skate on that hill. And our thought is we're right next to the police station, so if they're going to try to stop us, maybe they'll assume, well, they're not trying to hide it, so let's just go here. And they've driven by us and we've chatted before, but they've never actually said, hey, you can't be here. And it's a dead-end road, so it's not high traffic. Like I said earlier, my dad's a high school teacher. So it originally just started out as, I was doing some design work and, some 3D modeling, and from stopping in and talking to Dad for random other stuff, some of his students were interested in it. I'm like, well, how do you do this? What do you do here? And kind of like figuring out, combining the two things, social justice and building longboards, it just kind of clicked one day of, I was there, so I was working with a couple students, and then it became a regular kind of weekly thing. I'd come in, after work. And at this point, all of my dad's sophomore students, they get to design their own skateboard in 3D, and then they press them. And so this past summer, you know, I was working with Dad on showing him how to design them. You know, we cut some presses, you know, we made sure everything worked flawlessly, and then so right now all the students are getting to make their own. I would love, there's a few abandoned buildings downtown Dayton. They look like they used to be industrial, you know, probably a factory or workshop. I would love to have a workshop, like, you know, a whole full factory in like one part of it, and then the other build a skate park. Over the past year or so, I've been getting more involved with, you know, some like the local skate community. There's a group on Facebook called Dayton Longboarding. I've been, you know, with the people in Columbus doing different skate events, and I love, you know, skating with them, but really sharing why we build the boards and why we do it. You know, not just that, hey, we build skateboards, but, you know, why, and raising awareness for, you know, the issues here locally and abroad. Yeah, I would love to have a centralized place to, like, hey, you know, come in Saturday morning, you know, see the board that your board, you know, I'm working on it right now, you know, you can help me, you know, spray it or do whatever, and then let's go skate, you know, skate park or something. Cruise around downtown, like I would. You know, interested in it, you know, having a very similar board to this is just a generic pintail, it's the pintail shape. This is, you know, the one that is closest to surfing, and yeah, pressing this first one, I mean, you talk about, you know, that pride and that feeling of, you know, when I first got it done, I mean, I can see flaws all through it, but, you know, at this point, it doesn't matter. You know, sanding it, working on it, staining it, painting it, that first ride, you know, I'll have some people when I make them a board, as soon as they get the first scratch on it, I mean, they're freaking out, and like, but I don't make them for art pieces, I make them as something, you know, I get that, the relaxation, that freeing, you know, feeling, they're made to be enjoyed. Yeah, this was one of the first ones out of the press for this particular type. Usually the first one I take, you know, research and development or whatever, just to see if it's even fun or functional. I was wanting to try some new techniques, so I laminated some fabric to the bottom of it, so there's this blue plaid on it. Yeah, so this is what's called a drop deck. So the trucks actually mount higher than the standing platform. So it gets you a little bit lower to the ground, so you get more leverage. Some people use them for like downhill stuff. I use it for long distance. You know, people do crazy stuff, like I said, like the Soldiers of Downhill, just bombing down a hill. And that's fun. I don't do it. I mean, you know, you get stuff, I get stuff. At first people, I talk about it, and like, oh, that's really cool that you do that. But yeah, there's been a few, I volunteer with the youth group at my church, and there's been a few kids that just really attached to it and connected with both longboarding, but then also the social justice aspect of it. And I mean, we'll skate when it's nicer weather out. You know, it's like every Saturday. You know, we'll get out early on a Saturday, and you know, usually it's hard for them to wake up, but for this they will. And that was really cool to see them actually, you know, get fired up for something and passionate. But even not specifically my thing, even at work, you know, there's a couple other guys around my age that when I first said, you know, like I'm starting a business and I'm doing all the paperwork and I'm, you know, figuring all the stuff out, you know, it seems daunting, and they're like, really? Like, why? But at this point now, these two guys, they're both doing the same thing. Not particularly with Longboards, each have their own little facet, but you know, we joke at lunch, you know, at least once a week we'll have the weekly business meeting, just as an accountability thing to say, okay, well, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing with your business? What are you doing? Like, what's the next thing? What do you need to move on? And honestly, one of the greatest resources for me was here at Wright State. There's the Small Business Development Center. It's over in Reich. It's part of the Small Business Association, and it's free. So there's all these classes like business startup, and I came one day, you know, and they have this whole presentation, and one of the first questions they ask is like, should you really be starting a business? No, seriously. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And like ask all these tough questions. When you get past that, like, all right, you know, what type of business? And I knew nothing of that. You know, I work with computers and, some engineering stuff, but business is, it's, way over the top. So it was such a key thing for me to make that connection, and then, go through the business startup, hiring employees, which I haven't done yet, but there's a lot of laws on that, doing taxes and all that stuff. I'd say was a huge part of that for me. And Earl Gregoridge, the guy that runs it, he's awesome. I love that guy.